got back into Pokemon Unite, and I wanted to make a tier list to kind of see where everything is now, but we don't have any time to waste because there's so many Pokemon. So if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, share with your friends, comment your thoughts down below, and real quick, use code VERLISSA5 for 20% off your G Fuel order. If you're not drinking G Fuel, you're griefing. You're down on energy, you're down on focus, you're not gaming well. Let's get into the tier list where we're going to waste some time talking about Cramorant, because if you ever thought Dive Air Slash was the best pick on Cramorant at any point in Pokemon Unite's history, just uninstall the game right now. There is no hope for you. And people are going to say, well, Surf, Hurricane, Cramorant are S tier now because of the buffs. These aren't buffs. We have 17% special attack. Let's say Cramorant gets like 500, 600 special attack, and that's at the end of the game. 1 damage per level, and then a base 80. When Pokemon have 4,000 to 6,000 health. This isn't a real buff. This isn't anything meaningful. It's just that Hurricane Surf Cramorant has always been S tier, if not high A tier, and that was what was going on with all of my previous tier lists and stuff. And people like, oh, but there was the time where Surf was bugged, and then it got quote unquote bug fixed and still was one-shotting people. So no one ever stood this guy. I picked it up from the beginning. Best Cramorant player in the world. S tier now, finally getting his due. Kind of the same thing on Garchomp. Like, launch Garchomp when it evolved at level 10 was the best Garchomp. It's just that players were really bad and didn't know how to actually get Garchomp to that position. Also, level 9 was actually busted because Gabite got like all of the crit and like leveling stats at that point. So you actually power spiked at 9 and people were griefing because they were waiting till 10, but you hit 9 and then you win anyways. And then level 10 Garchomp just had way too many stats. But also Garchomp getting an insane buff with like the 1 second cooldown off of Dragon Claw and Dragon Rush. So now he's like super spammy, a lot more mobile, can actually get onto characters. But I mean, like, the S tier character no one knew how to play got buffed and easier. And so now we're going to see the classic thing in Pokemon Unite where it's actually going to get nerfed into being probably unplayable or something stupid now. Alright, who else is in S tier? Well, we have the new Pokemon, and this is just some of the dumb, like, again, classic Pokemon Unite. New Pokemon comes out, and it's super overpowered, except when it isn't, and it's super underpowered, and then the devs just have no idea what they're doing. But, like, Phalanx and Ceruledge, they're just overtuned. They're pushed, and that's kind of it. We'll see what happens with the rest of C tier, because historically, I'm just like, yo, Mamoswine, everyone's sleeping on Mamoswine, even though, like, it doesn't fit now because I have... There we go. And once again, it's like, yeah, Mamoswine was actually, like, one of the best, not tanks. It was just a straight-up fighter. You could just go in as an attacker and one-shot everything while being super tanky. You had super crazy early game control. But I don't know what happened. Like, Mamoswine just does less damage. It didn't really get any changes, but I, like, fully stack an attack weight, and I don't one-shot people anymore. But that's just how power creep goes. Too much power gets into the game, time to kill gets too low, and then that means all-rounders/fighters need to get, like, above-average durability or extra weirdness in their kit to be able to survive, and then the game isn't fun. I honestly enjoy AD carry metas a lot more in MOBAs, especially, like, League of Legends and stuff, because at least you can do something about a carry. You stun it, you lock it down, and it's taken care of. Also, it means the value of mages go up, and once again, mages very dealable with, especially when it comes down to, like, burst and stuff, because tanks can keep that in check, and then you have a lot of balance. But then when fighters are powerful, you see all kinds of nonsense where it's like, oh, we have mobility creep, too many dashes, too much durability, too many shields, too much unstoppability to make sure it has target access, but then there's just no counterplay about it, and that's just how it ends up going. But also because of that, the AD carries in Pokemon Unite right now, they're B tier, you know, they're not strong. I prefer having A tier Cinderace. S tier Cinderace kind of spooky, but at least it feels a lot more manageable. I actually haven't seen Inteleon, so I don't know exactly where it is, but I guess if I haven't seen it, like, is it C tier? Is it lower B? Is there some weird skill cap stuff? Did it receive a nerf? Is it power corrupt? I don't know. I didn't play the entire time, so I don't know every single movement of characters to this point, but it is kind of sad because Inteleon feels like the perfect pick for a Pokemon MOBA as an AD carry. It lives out that fantasy. A lot of these characters are actually really cool at doing that. But then, yeah, depending on the meta, depending on how incompetent the devs are, weird stuff happens. We can also talk about Mr. Mime. So Mr. Mime was the best character in the game for well over the first year of Pokemon Unite, and then people like realized this strength after Mr. Mime got buffs. Like, Mr. Mime was already the best character, got buffed, got Giga nerfed down, and then like just kept on getting nerfed down, but still has a high amount of playability, even though its damage is like half or whatever it used to be, where you could just like one-shot people off a wall, even like tether one-shot people, stack your Unite super quick with the damage, and then just lock down entire games. But if you were dialed in and you decided from day one that you wanted to be the quirky Mr. Mime main, nothing could stop you for a very long time. But now the character, I don't think it's as much power creep as just getting like way over nerfed. And now it's like, yep, what you do, still playable, but very far from its heights, going from like double S tier to A minus. And that also brings us to a character like Sableye, where if you just have a very weird game warping moveset, the ceiling goes so high that's like, who knows what this character's potential is. And then eventually it's like, oh, it gets found out, and then the devs nerf it, and then weird stuff happens. So it's like, Sableye probably A tier. Maybe there's like some S shenanigans hiding in there. The problem with Mr. Mime is it got so objectively nerfed and weakened as the game got more power crept. It's like, yeah, I don't think Mr. Mime can be S tier anymore. But like Sableye, probably like a safe A, but really, really skill expressive Pokemon right here. Gengar just seems always good, especially into the snowballing. But this is where it gets kind of weird on the classification of the tier list and where Pokemon go. Like, anything in A tier is strong, and with proper play and character mastery, like, it's as good as an S. It really comes down to how easy it is to reach the power potential of the character. Like, Garchomp is just always going to scale, and then you hit level 9, you ult in on an objective, you scoop people around, you just win. You can also burn the objectives, and even then, like, if you fall behind in levels, you can just farm so fast. Like, okay, you're always back in it. Cramorant is just one-shotting half the cast anyways, so you're going to find levels, you're going to be able to farm quickly, you can get snipes at objectives, and then you can just post up with your Unite move. You get it a couple times per game, and it's just super easy. But then, like, the higher S tier up here with the new fighter characters, like, yeah, just stupid stuff inside the game where you can screw up while also just having way too much innate power. With this, you kind of have to earn and build into your power and still play properly, but the strength is still very much there. I am conflicted on Mimikyu. Mimikyu is like probably the highest A tier, but I've also just seen like consistently S tier stupidity from this character. Most of the time when I go up against Mimikyu, my reaction is, what was I supposed to do there? What can I do? It just out damages me and outlasts even me playing correctly. So yeah, either like A+ because you actually have to play properly to get a ton out of Mimikyu, or it's just a stupid and free character, and that's why a lot of people are picking it right now. Actually, I think we can make a bit more room inside of S tier for one of the most powerful Pokemon in the game right now. I'm just kidding. Slowbro is absolute trash. It's always been trash, and much like with Cramorant, it's the ultimate game IQ check. If you think Slowbro is good, or if you think Slowbro has ever been good, you're wrong. You're bad at the game, you're underdeveloped, and you also don't understand MOBAs or have general gaming sense at all. The only thing Slowbro can do in the early game is sit under goal and not die, while completely sacrificing the laning phase for its teammate. And then, at best, it makes the game a 4v4. But the thing is, you just ignore it. And you can actually just ignore it. The problem is, bad players tunnel on this thing because they see a Pokemon out of position. Like, yo, we can pick and then burn all of our cooldowns and take down the Slowbro, and then you lose the game. But the reason why Slowbro is one of the worst Pokemon ever is because you just dive through it. Sure, it might catch someone, and then it's a 4v4, but if you get the jump on the enemy team, and usually that's because, like, Slowbro is baiting or out of position, or also if it's, like, cuddling its teammate to try to support, well, it's still failing its job as a tank in pretty much every scenario. There's a lot of unstoppability in the game, so Surf doesn't really do anything. In a draft scenario, depending on the rest of the CC inside of the opponent's team, you can just go full heal and then ignore everything. Yes, I know full heal doesn't stop its Unite move, but still, like, okay, it becomes a 4v4. And if the engage through Slowbro is successful and locks up the enemy team, and the Pokemon that gets Slow Beam doesn't die, now it's a 5v4 because Slowbro is useless. Or maybe a 5v4.2. I'd call Slowbro a fifth of a Pokemon. And a big problem is Slowbro only has one good ability. You have to pick between Scald and Surf, and then the other one is whatever, because in the chaos of a team fight where there's tons of unstoppability, again, having access to the full heal, or if everyone's cuddling, telekinesis isn't reliable to do anything. Like, sure, maybe get a pick, but once again, oh, it just made the game a 4v4. But again, once that wears off, you now have a situation where the opponent's Pokemon is useful, and you aren't. And then when it comes to Scald, I guess people don't understand how the game works, because most of the damage in the game is base damage. It's not all the scaling stuff. Now, there are some Pokemon where it's like, oh, it has 200% attack scaling, so knocking off 60% of that might feel significant, but even then, you're not reducing 60% of a physical Pokemon's damage output. You can also full heal the Scald as well. And sure, Slowbro did get buffed, but once again, these are like proxy buffs that don't really do or mean anything, where it's like, well, the attack reduction going from 40 to 60% isn't going to make this character good. And if it was bad enough to need buffs in the first place, then like it's a bad Pokemon that's still bad. So like the most I can give it with this is C. And then an argument is, but what if they have like all physical Pokemon? You just go Scald and shut them down. It's like, then just pick Scizor and get infinite defense and actually do damage and contribute to the fight and annihilate the enemy team instead of doing nothing but making it a 4v4 for a little bit, maybe, sometimes, possibly, when you have your Unite move up. So yeah, like Slowbro, what does it do? Actually nothing. Let's talk about some real Pokemon like Umbreon. My goodness, the numbers on this Pokemon are insane. Level 6 when you get Wish, what do you mean it's healing 1300? What do you mean? And it gives damage reduction. And then when you actually get to like the meaningful part of the game, it gives more damage reduction and a crazy heal, while being a tank class Pokemon and then having a wacky Unite move. Yeah, like Umbreon A tier, and it just feels successful. We're like, oh, I can't do anything to it. Why did it do so much damage? And why the Pokemon that it's supporting just gain half its health instantly? Okay, I guess we just lose today. Now, the reason why it isn't S tier is because it's not the one taking over games, or even like enabling a Pokemon to completely take over a game to a crazy degree. So I think it's a pretty comfortable A tier Pokemon. As for who's next to put where, I don't even know, man. Like, Goodra doesn't seem good. Dragonite doesn't seem good. I feel like with the existence of a D tier, though, it's not like anything can be a tier below Slowbro, though. So there's that. Let's actually put something inside of D tier. Greedent, it's not scoring meta. It's not weird Belch Bug. It's just an annoyance. It's a mild annoyance. And that's the thing, like, if you're going to play something annoying that can, like, distract the opponent, at least Greedent can actually, like, get a little bit done, but it's not in nearly its strongest state. It's not really doing too much. Same thing for, like, C tier. The C tier is, this doesn't really do too much tier. The B tier is, being skillful with it can do pretty well, even though there's, like, this is the power creep tier. This is, you're pretty good, but there's just too much natural power inside of it. And then if you play these Pokemon better, you're just going to win more. And then S tier is cracked and free. So I think that kind of like builds it out. We have good, but crept. And then we just have like winning. This is the winning tier, and then we just have straight up OP. No, this is the free. This is your free space. So yeah, that's kind of the way we break this one down. I guess that kind of goes into Dunno, where like I've actually seen a lot of Leafeon. I still don't know if it's good or not, or what it does. Like it exists, and sometimes it felt like it did something impactful, but was that Leafeon? I don't know. Maybe that puts that in C tier, but then maybe it's actually strong and I went up against bad players. Not enough to make a decision. Same thing on Scyther, because I only saw Scizor, and Scizor is strong and annoying. I almost wanted to put him in S tier. And that's where things get a little weird, because if you want to make like a super duper complex tier list, even though it's starting to get too many characters for something like that, you can do an S counter pick, you can do an S blind pick kind of thing. And Scizor as a counter pick, which kind of only goes into draft, but also depends on the meta. When most of the S and A tiers are physical Pokemon, Scizor just does better for free. But also it annihilates mages because of its insane mobility, and it can just get damage. So maybe Scizor is S tier. Its laning feels pretty strong and abusive, and then it can just kind of go crazy. But I've also seen it kind of taper off in that late game. which is why my initial feeling is A, but then like S counter pick against an all physical Pokemon team, or you just throw it out there and there's a high chance the opponent has enough physical Pokemon to make it S tier. So that's where that goes. Same thing on Venusaur, because Phalanx is like Giga broken right now, and Venusaur can just heal off of all of them and make it an infinity fight. So like it's an A tier counter pick, but it also isn't A tier Pokemon right now. So there are some complexities and nuance to the tier list, but I'm just kind of like saying, hey, here's how the power of the Pokemon breaks down if you're a pretty skillful player, with some room to where like, oh, never mind, the maximum skill expression could go a tier higher on this character, but depending on like the ceiling floor, it's like, nah, some Pokemon are just not worth playing at all, and then we can go into that. So yeah, Scizor's crazy. I've seen some crazy Zoroark as well, when it's like, oh, you have that much mobility, and then you can also just find a fair amount of damage. Yeah, I think Zoroark's good, but then Ceruledge is just like the S tier Zoroark, but Ceruledge is kind of the S tier a lot of things right now. Maybe from here on out, we just go in order. Ninetales, fine Pokemon, always been fine, got power crept, but like got power crept out of being power crept. I haven't seen a lot, and I haven't seen it do much. Same thing with Wigglytuff. I know Wigglytuff can like slap you around and do some things, but it's always been in like that Slowbro, D to C tier, ignore it, I don't care about Sing, its Unite move isn't good enough. With the prevalence of Umbreon, picking it also can just be a risk where it's like, oh, Unite's moves in, and then Umbreon says nah. So in a draft scenario, it can get countered and screw over the entire team, but it also, what do you pick Wigglytuff to counter? So it doesn't have any counter pick position as well, so I think C is like as fair as it can get. Machamp. Machamp is just like strong fighter, but got power crept and also power crept by everything else. And if you like, a dedicated Machamp player can do work. A dedicated B tier player can do work. But you're better off picking up something else and gaining like 7% win rate instead, unless you really, really like the character and maybe you've discovered something on it. But there's no way Machamp exists in any S tier or even A+ for anyone ever right now. Absol. This is like another C tier where it's like you coin flip. I think here's how Absol works. You get lucky in the early game on that gank, B tier. You get unlucky, D tier. Average, C tier. That's not how tier lists work. That's not how any other Pokemon ranking works. There's no more flippy Pokemon in the game than Absol. And with all the other shenanigans, like, yep, I think C tier, especially going up against Absol and having Absol on my team, it's like, I would have really liked if you picked an A tier instead, even if you're having a good Absol game. A good Absol game is not going to be as good as a good other tier character. I've seen some crazy Talonflames, though. I was like, wait, Talonflame's still in this game? And it's not from, like, cheesy score shielding stuff, like, oh, just aggro, dive in, and do crazy amounts of damage. Talonflame is still hanging in there, and it can clean up the fight. Sick. Talonflame, like, Talonflame feels solid A tier. Then we just get into like supports. Eldegoss kind of always been A tier, except the times that's S tier. Now Crustle feels correct in A tier, and I'm not talking about like potion, annoying, tanky nonsense. Nah, just like aggro Crustle gets in there and then just locks out a lot of Pokemon. Like probably bottom of A tier, maybe like a B+ tier. I'm going to give the benefit to Crustle because it's just one of those things where like, yeah, the game is underdeveloped. Pokemon Unite never got developed. It never got a healthy player base of actually good players that understand how gaming works or finding skill expression and achieving ceilings on Pokemon. I would say there's maybe a dozen players that have even come close to potentially finding the peak of what is possible in this game, which doesn't leave room for a lot of Crustle players. And again, just like so much skill issue inside of Pokemon Unite that makes it really hard to kind of get a tier list outside of just, oh, Pokemon feel and hands-on experience. Because it's not like anyone is actually stepping up on Sableye and going, this is actually the best SS, triple+ tier Pokemon to ever exist, and it's going to be that way until the Pokemon is removed from the game kind of strength. But instead, they're just kind of going, well, I'm useless, but if I'm useless in my 5-stack, and I target the strongest player on the enemy team with Slow Beam, then that means the net power is positive, therefore Slowbro is a benefit. But it's like, no, if you're playing good, and we're actually talking about skill expression here, and proper play, it's like, yeah, Slowbro, you ignore it, and you win the game. That's how it's bad, and that's how you can tell almost the entire player base of Pokemon Unite is bad. Next up, we have Snorlax. I'm putting it B tier. Also, if you use Flail, you're trolling because, like, why not just run Garchomp if you're just trying to get in there and do big damage to people? Where, like, you have a slightly better early game than Gible, but Snorlax doesn't have the power that it used to have. Like, when the game came out, Snorlax could take over that early game and then had the crazy heavy slam damage. Well, the problem is the utility that Snorlax brings to the game isn't enough to stop the power that's inside of the game. And again, it just has, like, not as crazy of an early game as some of the other pushed Pokemon, so you can't really do too much about it. Charizard, I've seen Charizard that makes it feel B tier, but, like, yeah, I guess it's like playable B tier. That's the best I've got to say about Charizard. Same thing about Blastoise. Feels C tier, but I think there's been some impactful Blastoise. However, every Blastoise that's been on my team is, like, still Squirtle after over 3 minutes into the game. So, like, oh, it's just Squirtle too weak to handle. And the problem is we also have weird stuff. Everyone's picking Ceruledge and Phalanx and then just, like, walking over any evolution Pokemon inside of lane. Also, I'm not ranking EX Pokemon. That's just nonsense. It shouldn't count. Worst decision by the devs. One of the main reasons why I actually don't want to consider playing this game consistently, regularly again, and why the game's probably just going to die. Because, like, you can't make just stronger Pokemon that are so strong they need restrictions, and then play these games with ranked, where it's like, oh, sometimes they're not usable, sometimes they are usable. It's like, how about this? You just make them super overpowered, but you just leave them to be playable inside of normals and PvE modes, and then you can pay the money and feel like you're the hero carrying children with your deliberately objectively overpowered Pokemon, but keep it away from anything competitive. Make these the fun mode Pokemon. They'll still make sales and stuff, but, like, until then, the game's just unplayable. But until that happens, Squirtle is going to have to lane against Mewtwo or Miraidon, and then it doesn't get to play the game. So it's like, I've seen Blastoise be B+ tier, but I don't think it can actually do that with any amount of reliability. Pikachu, also feeling C tier. Every Pikachu I've had does not contribute. Just evaporates from the game. I think it maybe has one play a game, but it's nothing that decides or even improves the chances of winning inside the game. Zeraora just feels power crept. Kind of in, like, it's the melee version of the old 80 carries, which just feels about right when it's like, oh yeah, these things are allowed to exist, so I guess we can't have S tier Zeraora anymore, even though S tier Zeraora, did it feel more fair, or is that recency bias? Doesn't matter now. Gardevoir, A tier. That Unite move is crazy, and strong Gardevoir players have had a lot of time to get really strong and really consistent on this character. Blissey. Can Blissey exist as an A tier Pokemon now, is the question. I want to say the ceiling of Blissey is an A tier. That's a tricky ceiling to reach, and Comfey's, like, Comfey's the easier A tier, but Blissey is still A viable. Now, in a world where Umbreon exists, can Clefable be A tier? I don't think so. Now, maybe there's some, like, heavy Clefable faithful out there, but I don't think so. Sylveon feels A tier. You just hit level 4, and then you yell at them, and you just kind of get to at least neutralize a lane against a stronger Pokemon, or you can, like, Sylveon doesn't take over, but it's consistently good, and again, when played well, or supported just right, or with the right lane matchups, and playing into it, it's like, oh yeah, you actually come out of lane in a great position, and then you work towards objectives, and then that's going to help stabilize the endgame and contribute to a pretty successful win. Serena, like, C tier. Again, I haven't, like, seen it, and it kind of fell off, but it has, like, B tier kit. But I mean, like, why play Serena when, again, we have the new S tiers, and then we have Scizor? So, like, is it nah, but I mean, it is like, Serena has to do more than does nothing. So we got that. Trevenant in A tier. Seeing it, it's holding it down. It doesn't take over games, though. I feel like, for me, Trevenant's good but crept. We're just like, yeah, Trevenant now, if you, like, strip some power of the game, probably doing great. But until then, it's just good. Blaziken looking A tier though. Glaceon, I'm thinking is staying in B tier. I did the numbers where like I went onto Glaceon's page and I was doing math on Icicle Spear and I was like, wow, this move actually lost like 1500 damage. And that's usually the difference between one-shotting something or just like mowing down an entire team by targeting someone in the back line and just choo. So yeah, it got hurt. It's playable, but it got hurt and it's not having that good of a time. Sword on B. This used to be like one of the highest skill cap characters of the world. Like, yo, peak Sword before some new characters and power creep and nonsense and EX Pokemon, where like it was impossible to play at S tier. D-Lies found out how to, and then you could do S tier, but it's also hard to like get that consistency down because it's kind of weak early. You need something to go really right, and then the game's over. But then that hasn't been that way for a while. It was probably A tier for a bit, and then it's like, nah, like really good Sword is not worth putting the work into, because like being really good on any other higher tier character is just going to have more impact on the game. Don't know where Hoopa is. At least it's not the S tier game warping menace that it used to be. It's just like, yo, you can pick it. Fortunately got nerfed into not really being too playable. That kit is still stupid. Duraludon didn't need buffs, and now it's just like A tier stupid on that, not S tier, because like as it has that 80 carry syndrome, but like as peak 80 carry that just got buffs, it's like I'm putting them here. Azumarill, I don't know what it is about Azumarill. Like I look at that thing, I'm like, this Pokemon's not gonna do anything in this game. It's not gonna win. It's not gonna beat me up. And then it's always beating me up, and it's always beating other people up, and it's just around, and it's just hurting, and it's just being successful. Like, A tier. Espeon feeling strong B tier. I haven't seen, like, super meme one-shots. It has a very aggressive mid-game power spike, but as long as the last 3 minutes of the game matter more than anything else, it's like, yeah, we don't have it in A tier. Delphox, though, I've seen a lot of A tier stuff coming out of Delphox. Not a lot of Buzzwole. Good but crept. Probably. Same with Mew, even though Mew just like straight got nerfed into being not great. Tyranitar doesn't really seem like it's doing much of anything. Chandelure's probably A tier. Dodrio, I've had it been explained that like this is the highest skill cap character right now, where if played perfectly, there's nothing you can do about it. But I don't know if anyone exists to actually achieve that skill ceiling, so it's not even an achievable A. I don't even know. Actually, you know what? I don't know where this Pokemon's gonna go. I didn't want to make this look ugly by going 3 rows into A tier, but Chandelure just seems strong. And Dragapult, actually no, Dragapult's trash in this game too, as well as like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and Pokemon Sword and Shield. Okay, not trash, but like, I've seen it. It feels like it's having an impact, but it just kind of like twirls around and then loses. And my experience with Dark Urshifu is that it does nothing. Even when Urshifu is having a good game, it's doing nothing. Haven't seen Rapid Strike style. Apparently in the tank meta it's good, so maybe like Rapid Strike with all these fighters and like bulkier Pokemon might be B tier, but I haven't seen it. So I don't know, but what I do know is Dark Urshifu does nothing. And then I had a Meowscarada, steal Rayquaza, and win the game, so A tier. So there we go, that is the Pokemon Unite July Ceruledge tier list. A lot of the game actually feels fair and balanced, and most of the losses coming down to team diff and just kind of like the normal garbage of the game outside of this. This is stupid. The current state of Phalanx and Ceruledge is just not cool. And Mimikyu also feels too not cool too much. Meanwhile, S-tier Cramorant and S-tier Garchomp feels fair, but it's really cool to see their power being wielded at a high potential. And also, like, maybe Scizor is here as well, and it's just kind of like, yeah, I'm not a fan of S-tier Mimikyu. I'm not a fan of, like, this many S-tier all-rounders. And maybe because I'm the best Garchomp in the world and no other Garchomp is even, like, close to me or comes off as a threat. Like, okay, my Garchomp is also, like, unfair and shouldn't exist. And then, like, depending on other states of balance and then, like, a weird buff to some kind of character, like, you need S tier. I think the game has had healthy several Pokemon inside of S tier. but now it's like, it's too much balance. We're like, yeah, again, like these dudes are up here. So we have like S+, and then we have S. And if you just kind of delete that and we look at this, the game feels very fair. And then the tier list feels pretty right when it's like, yeah, this is my experience on how the Pokemon play when they're going against me and having their strong moments, or being used by my team and having their weak moments. Like, cool. It's like there would be some Pokemon, like there'd be some really good play to Pokemon Unite right now, but as it is with like every game and MOBA stuff, it's like, nope, the one stupid thing, or like that little mechanic inside the patch, flavor of the whatever, is ruining the experience, and that just kind of makes it upsetting. And knowing the devs is like, nope, they're not going to nerf enough. Like, I'd rather like S tier stuff get overshot nerfed, except for the things I play. Like, I'm fine if a new character launches too strong and then gets overcompensated nerfed. That's healthier for the game than like randomly taking a strong Pokemon and over nerfing it or something, or a Pokemon that was already good and then buffing it until it becomes way too impossibly strong and then not nearly as good or fun to play. It's like, the rest of the game feels pretty preserved and fair and fun and playable, and if I have it in Dunno, it's like, well, it probably hasn't like popped off into S tier anyway. So yeah, feeling pretty good about all this. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.